Hello, everyone. Welcome back to From a Biblical Perspective with Sabriel Jemison. I'm your host, Sabriel Jemison, and today I want to talk about Job chapter 1. We're just going to do chapter 1 today. I was debating over whether I should include multiple chapters in every video, but I think we're going to stick with just one chapter per video, at least for this one, and then probably the next one as well. First of all, I just wanted to give an introduction to what I'm going to be talking about with this series. I've talked about it in other videos before, but if you have not seen those videos, then I will tell you now. And Job is a book about a man and the life that he goes through and the problems that he encounters because of Satan's temptations against him, and he goes through many terrible hardships, and it is about him wrestling with God, and it is about dealing with trials and understanding trials that come to your life and still believing in God and still trusting in God through them. And this is a very complicated book. It's very complex. Many people skip over it because they think it's too hard or they think it's boring, and it's definitely one of my favorite books in the whole Bible. So that is my little introduction, and today we will just be talking about chapter 1. Like I said, this is going to kind of surround the spiritual realm and the physical world relations to the spiritual realm and how the interactions go between physical people, human encounters, versus the actions of Satan and God and angels and what they are doing all simultaneously happening in this life. So, the theme of the book, I will introduce you to the book specifically, which is about God. The theme is that God is all you need. That is the biggest theme that I've gotten from this. Also, I am getting over a terrible cold, so bear with me with that. The topics are about spiritual realms, suffering, God's power, influence that we have over others, prayer, wrestling with God. Those are the biggest themes I have seen in this book. Also, some history and background about it. Some believe it to be fictional, but it is set in the times between 21,000 and 19,000 BC, in the times of Abraham, and the author is unknown. Viewers, you can read the full chapter if you want to. I would recommend that. I would recommend reading the full chapter. I will be going through some of it, reading some of it per verse, but mostly sharing the thoughts and the notes that I have collected. So I'm just going to go straight to Job, and you can definitely follow along. Please do follow along. Job is right before the book of Psalms. So if you go to the very middle of your Bible, you will likely be in Psalms, and then just go a few more pages over and you should find Job. The first thing that I have written on here, right underneath where it says Job, at the top, it says the book of Job, and underneath it I wrote, who feared God. Job who feared God. That is the biggest thing about Job. That is one of the things that is mentioned about Job throughout the Bible when he is spoken about in other verses. And we see him described in many different ways in this first section here, from verses 1 all the way through verse 5. This is titled in my Bible, Job and his family in Uz. So he lived in the land of Uz. He had a big family. This also says that he was upright, feared God, shunned evil. He was a father to many, rich in goods, and sacrificed to God. So he was a very upstanding man. He believed in God. He followed God. He was living his life. He was going through his life. He was doing good things with the riches that he had. And he was sacrificing not just for himself, but also for his family. He was trying to keep his family in God's goodness as well. The next part goes into verses 6 through 12, and this is where it gets a little complicated. So, I'm going to read all of this section, and then we will talk about it. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil?" So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not made a hedge around him, around his household, and around all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your power, only do not lay a hand on his person." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. So here we are presented for ourselves this audience, right? They are there with the sons of God, who are often viewed as something similar to angels, are viewed as actual angels, or other spiritual beings. We do not know everything about every spiritual being that is out there, but the sons of God are often described in other places of the Bible like angels or actual angels. And Satan also came. So this shows us that Satan can go into heaven. He came to God, and the Lord asked him, "From where do you come?" God knew already where Satan was. God knows everything. He knew where Satan was. Really, he was just trying to get Satan to tell him what he wanted to say, because God knew that Satan wanted to say something to him. And when Satan tells God that he's been walking around the earth, what he's really saying is, "I'm bored." He's saying, like, I don't have anything to do, like, I'm so tired of being so evil all the time, and it's getting boring just torturing the same people over and over again. And God presented Job to Satan. He told Satan about Job and allowed Satan to test Job, because God knew already how this was going to end. In the end, God knew that eventually, even after all these things, Job could overcome that, and he could stay faithful to him. And so he's allowing this testing because he wants Job to grow. And Satan tells God that the only reason that Job is obeying you is because all these things that you have. We read in the last verses about how much he had his family, he has all of these goods, he's a very wealthy man. And Satan says, if you take all that away from him, he's not going to follow you anymore. He's going to believe that you are evil, he's going to believe that you're bad, he's going to be selfish about it and think that this is all his to have, and it's going to cause him to fall away from you. So God says, okay, fine, go ahead. You can take those things away from him, just do not harm his person. You can take those things away from him, but you cannot affect him in his body, not himself. So, as the source of all of Job's blessings, God has the authority to say that. And we also see here that Satan is the one who takes it away. That is very, very important to note. God allows it, but Satan is the one who actually actively does it. He is the one who takes away all of these things. We're going to see that within these next few verses. So, he believes faith relies on earthly gain. That is what Satan is saying here. His faith is only there because of all the things that you've given him. It's not there because of the sacrifices you made for him. It's not there because he just believes that you are God and you are worthy because of who you are. He thinks you're worthy just because you give him nice things all the time. That is what Satan is saying. And God is saying, okay, if you want to test that theory, then okay, fine. You can take away his things. So, we see in the next few verses, these awful, awful things happen to Job. If even one of these things had happened to so many people on the earth who are claiming to be faithful to God, they probably would have been just so distraught and might have lost their faith entirely. Now, blaming God is not the answer. We will see that because we know that Satan is the source of all this trouble. We saw that. Job did not see these things that we're talking about. In verses 6 through 12, he did not know what was going on in the spiritual realm. He did not know that these things are happening. But it is important for us to remember sometimes when we are going through our own trials, maybe there was something that God told Satan about, hey, I want you to go do this thing. I want you to go test so-and-so. Or he's allowing Satan to test somebody because he wants us to grow, because he wants to see our faith increase, because he wants us to trust him more without the amazing, perfect life that we have here. Because guess what? Our life is not going to be perfect. And let's go now into the actual things that he does. So, all of Job's children were eating and drinking in their oldest brother's house, and there is a messenger who comes to Job who tells him that the oxen and the donkeys that were feeding beside them, the Siberians raided them and took them away, and they killed all your servants. They took all your animals, they killed all your servants, and fire came from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants that were inside of the house, and they raided the camels. So there's all of these other animals that are being taken, and we then see that the house fell where all of his children were, and they died. And only this man has escaped to tell Job about these things. We see Job's response in verses 20 through 22. Then Job arose, tore his robe, and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped. And he said, Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return there. And the Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong. So, even after all of this, no part of Job told God that he was wrong for allowing this, told God that he was wrong for doing this, because Job might have thought that this was God purposefully ordaining these things, purposefully striking down these things, not knowing that it was Satan, really. He recognizes his humility. That is the first thing that he does when he is grieving, falls to the ground and worshipped. He did grieve. That is part of the tearing of the robe and shaving your head. That was a form of grief that they did in these times. And it is not a sin to grieve your losses. It's not a sin to grieve your losses, because it does say that he did not sin. It is not a sin to be sad. It is not a sin to lament. Actually, we need more lamenting. I've talked about this before, but we need more lamenting. Don't avoid despair. It's okay to be sad. We can lament with God. We can be sad with God. We don't have to be sad and be upset with him or be mad at him. We can be sad with him. He also is sad about the things that are happening to us. He doesn't want us to suffer. He wants us to reap the benefits of suffering. But he does not want us to suffer. He doesn't want us to feel these grieving thoughts. We can lament with him instead of being bitter towards him. And he realizes that he did not deserve what he had. We don't deserve anything that we have. That is really important to remember, especially when we find ourselves being materialistic, because that is something that Job was able to avoid. All that he had was really belonging to God. He recognized that. He recognized that the things that he had belonged to God. And he recognized that I'm not going to take any of this stuff with me. I didn't have any of it when I was born. And God was the one that gave it to me. He is able to take it away. That is his right. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And this is very, very hard. That was very, very difficult to do. I cannot imagine that being the initial response that I would have if all of my animals were gone, all of my servants were gone, my children were dead, my fields and things I owned were burnt, all of it. That was not the response that I would have. And I know that. And that is probably why it didn't happen to me. And God allows things to happen that he knows we can overcome, and he will not let us be tempted beyond what we are able to endure. And that is also true for Job and what happened to him. But that is all I have to say for now. We will see in the next chapter how Job responds when Satan does something else. Satan has done that, and he's seen that Job still did not sin. So now in chapter 2, he's going to ask God for something else. And we're going to see the response that Job has. We will probably do chapters 2, 3, and 4. Probably next time. But that was the introduction to Job. Kind of a low note to land on, but the biggest takeaways that I can have for you with this is the fact that God and Satan are interacting in the spiritual realm. We have a spiritual realm. The spiritual realm is active, and God and Satan can battle it out all they want, and sometimes people get involved in that because of the faith that we have. It needs to be tested, it needs to be tried, it needs to grow, and God allows Satan to cause some harm because it provokes that growth. It makes that growth happen. And Satan is the source of all evil. It wasn't God who did these things. It was not God who caused these things to happen to Job. He allowed it. But he cannot create evil. He's perfect. He is good. He is all amazing. And there's nothing about him that can make something evil happen. Also, Job had a very powerful response. When these bad things happened, he recognized his humility. He recognized he did not deserve the things that he had, and that all he had was really God's, and he stayed faithful to God. He still worshipped him in the midst of these problems. And also, one more final thing, it is not a sin to grieve. That's a big thing that I want to emphasize, because a lot of times people think that it's a sin because they're upset about something that's happened in their life, or they're sad about something that's happening in their life. That's not sinful, and that's not something we should avoid. We shouldn't avoid it just because the Bible says to rejoice always. Yeah, you can still rejoice. Rejoicing always does not mean ignoring all the bad things that happen in your life. There is a whole entire book of Lamentations, and David has many psalms about that grief and that depression and that sorrow and that anger that is human to feel. And we can sit with God in that. It does not have to be that we are against God when we are upset about something that's happening in our life. So, that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that you learn many things in this series that we are going to be doing, and realize that God really is all you need, even in the face of terrible things that can happen in your life. Thank you so much once again for listening, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.